Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Passionate People, Preposterous Peeves, Season 2. I'm your host, Ike, and before you get too sucked into this awesome interview, do us both a favor and like, subscribe, and share this amazing piece of entertainment, because I am here with the one, the only, Joe Stapleton!
What's up, Isaac or Ike? What do you go by?
I go by Ike on here, but Isaac's fine as well. How you doing, my guy?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I guess we've known each other for a long time.
In roundabout ways, yeah, I would say so.
I mean, because you made some kind of reference to my Skype name to referring to a podcast that I think I haven't done in like 11 years. So
yeah, I've followed your career since Poker Road. Actually, since you were not before Poker Road. Actually, I followed when you started doing what was the name of the podcast for like the
first one I did was called Poker Wire Radio.
Poker Wire Radio. Yeah, you filled in for you. You took the seat of your boy Huff when he left, right?
Yeah, basically that's more or less what happened. Yes.
Yeah, so crazy. But yeah, I've been following you, and I've followed I think all of those iterations, going from Poker Wire to Poker Road, Two Jacks in the Hole, and then
for people who don't know what this is, let me put a date on it. Poker Wire Radio. I quit Mad TV to host Poker Wire Radio in 2008. So that's
what
how
were you
long
doing
we're
on?
talking.
I didn't actually know you were on Mad TV. What'd you do on Mad TV?
I was, like the sketches and how there's writers of them.
Mm-hmm.
I was the guy who would get food for the guys writing them. So,
nice. Yeah.
I moved up just a little bit before I quit. I became a production coordinator, which is pretty cool. It was a union job, and I think I was making $1,200 a week at like 23 years old.
That's pretty sick.
And also we're talking again. This was in 2004.
Yeah,
when I got that job. Yeah, so I had a pretty sweet life in LA, which is why the temptation to join the poker tour is pretty much the only thing that could have got me away.
Yeah, but I mean, pretty serendipitous that it did, because you went from doing those and now you're a host of the EPT.
It's kind of weird. I'm not like a pessimistic person in general. I'm a pretty glasses half full kind of guy, and I look at the life I have and I go, man, boy, isn't it lucky that I got into poker? Like, I'm on TV. Like, I was probably never going to end up on TV. And I'm a stand-up comedian. Like, I'm not super successful at it, but, like, I probably wouldn't have been a stand-up comedian. And then I think to myself, or maybe I'd be doing way better if I hadn't gone into poker. Like, maybe I'd be hosting, like, an actual late-night TV show. No, I really am quite happy. My life has exceeded my wildest imagination. If you could have asked me at 15, like, what's the best life I could have thought of, I pretty much have that.
Speaking of comedy, if we are to return to our normally scheduled broadcast, what is your favorite knock-knock joke?
What is my favorite knock-knock joke? Oh my God. I absolutely skipped that one. It's the only one of your questions.
You call yourself a comedian?
I'm so terrible. Hold on. What's my favorite knock-knock joke? I mean, the only one I can think of is the what is it? The repeating cow? All
right, hit me with it. I don't actually know this one, so
it's man, I can't believe I'm blowing it right now. I'm so sorry. Dead air in your podcast. I was so smug that I filled out all your questions ahead of time, like days ago, and I literally, it's what.
All right, here, I'll allow this one condolence as a favor to such an awesome guest. Since you are a stand-up comedian, what do you have a favorite bit or a bit that you're working on, that you're kind of crafting, that you want to share with us?
Sure. Okay. What am I working on right now that hasn't quite worked yet? I've got this thing that I'm working on about how it's like a mistake these days to tell anyone that you like something.
Oh, yeah.
Right? To just be like, oh, like, I like the bare naked ladies, right? Like, let's just say that. Because now you got to hear, like, their opinion on the thing that you like. And it's like either they don't like the thing, either they're like, ew, gross, bare naked ladies, or they like the thing way more than you do. And you can't live up to their expectations. They're like, oh, what's your favorite, like, fucking B-side from blah, blah, blah album? And you're like, sorry. And they're like, I thought you said you liked the bare naked ladies. Like, I made the mistake one time of telling someone that I'm like, oh, I like Marvel movies. And they're like, yeah? What's Nick Fury's badge number? And I'm just like, the fuck? What? No, I just like the... And so it's just like I just don't tell anyone anything about me anymore because I don't want to have to live up to whatever they think that should be. It's
the era of polarization. You have to either love or hate something. You can't be kind of like, it's pretty cool. I enjoy it.
Exactly. It's like it's almost better if the person doesn't like the thing you like than they like it too much.
Or even best, I think best is they've never heard of it. And you get to kind of explain it. And so they don't have like any preconceived, right? You're just like, oh, it's this thing. Like, oh, that's interesting. And there's like, it's like talking to people. Like, have you ever talked to people that are like kind of fresh off the boat and they just know nothing about America and you can just explain like rap music to them? There's like,
I mean, I have more of that situation with Americans who are off the boat from other parts of America, like who someone yesterday, oh man, I went to a wedding over the weekend and this guy at the wedding, he was around my age, had never heard of Tinder.
Wow.
And this was not a guy off the boat. This was an American.
Yeah. That man lives a very blessed life. It might be sheltered with his face in the sand, but man, not knowing about Tinder has to just be great.
I was doing this bit for a while, as you said, like pretending not to know things, where I would be at a party and wait for someone to bring up Bitcoin and then say that I hadn't heard anything about Bitcoin in like 10 years, but I bought a bunch of it like 10 years ago and I wasn't aware. Like, what's going on with Bitcoin? Of course, this isn't relevant now because Bitcoin's in the tank. But then when they tell me Bitcoin's worth 50,000, I have like a meltdown and I'm like, oh my God, I'm fucking rich. Holy shit. And just run around the party telling everyone I'm rich because I just found out about Bitcoin.
Oh, that's awesome. That's such a great way to like reverse it. Oh, so great. Oh man.
So anyway, that was a bit I was working on. Thanks for asking because I feel like I worked it out a little bit with you right there, just saying it.
Yeah.
Saying it live.
That was a bit you're working on?
Well, that bit, the thing about like not liking things enough is like I can't make that work. Like I've tried that at open mics a bunch of times and there's like a couple little chuckles in it, but I haven't quite figured out what the real through line is for it. So even just saying it here on this podcast with you is helpful.
We're going to come back to that when we talk about your passion, because to the surprise of probably no one, comedy is going to be your passion.
That's correct. Yes. Sorry, we had the passion point.
Yeah. No, we'll get there. But there's like a follow-up question that I kind of like wanted, like you're talking about working on bits, and I want to talk about that, but not quite yet. What I do want to talk about right now, though, is do you remember what your first date movie was?
Yeah, I think I do. It was my first date movie. I'm pretty sure it was. I remember it was a Jason Lee movie. And hold on, Jason Lee movies. It was not one of the better ones. I think it might have been. No, I had seen Mallrats already. No, it couldn't have been Stealing Harvard because that was 2002. That was too late. It was. I'll tell you which one was very close to being my first date movie.
Okay.
Was Titanic. Like that was in the first 3.
Yeah.
First date movies I went on.
How'd that go? Was it wise choice, bad choice, run it back, redo? Where are we at on that one?
I'm pretty sure I fingered her during Titanic, so I'm gonna say that was a win. That was a yes.
Both teenagers going the direction they had hoped.
Yeah, exactly. Like it was just and look, am I the sort of person that would finger someone in a movie theater now? Maybe. But as a teenager, it was kind of the only option that we had, a lot of us. So I don't feel bad about it. Do I think it's trashy? Absolutely. Do I, but at the time, like, you have raging hormones and nowhere to go. It's a dark room. You're like more or less alone, except for being surrounded by hundreds of people. So I don't regret
alone
it.
in public, as one might say.
Yeah.
What's your favorite meal to make just for yourself, assuming cost and time are not relevant factors?
My favorite meal to make just for myself.
Yep.
I got to tell you, man, the only thing I make is reservations. I'm actually not much of a cook for myself. I only cook if it's for other people. I don't, for me, it's kind of, we'll circle back to the whole comedy thing. Things like that, food, drink, are meant to be shared. And so when I'm alone, I will literally open a can of beans and eat it with a spoon, like, without heating it up. It's not.
Were you at least talking Bush's baked beans, or
yes,
or,
no,
okay.
the good
Top
shit,
shelf.
like the high quality stuff. Yeah,
the good shit. I'm sure Bush's appreciates that plug.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, Bush is getting in touch. Believe me. I'm okay. So I looked the movie up. I think it was Kissing a Fool with David Schwimmer and Jason Lee. Was my first date movie. The Titanic one's much better.
It is
the
much
Titanic
better.
story. Yes. So I'm not much of a cook when it's just for myself. I mean, Kraft macaroni and cheese is something I would make
top tier
for myself.
Do you go the extra mile and get like cheese to put on top and like, get it extra cheesy, or do you just stick with just sticking with the powder?
Come on. So one of the things here, we might dive into a peeve here. Here's a peeve for me.
Okay.
I don't fuck with the way people intended their food to be eaten. I don't fuck with ramen. Put an egg in it. Put hot sauce in it. I don't fuck with ramen. I don't fuck with macaroni and cheese. When I say I don't fuck with it, I mean I don't mess with the recipe. They figured it out. They know what they're doing. They have $1 billion R&D department at fucking General Foods or wherever they make that shit. They know what they're doing. I don't dip a Dorito into salsa. Don't mess with it. I don't put extra ketchup on a McDonald's burger. They know what they're doing. They haven't figured out. I don't fuck with it.
Speaking of not fucking with things, what is your favorite non-exercise thing that you have to force yourself to do?
It's good that you made a carve out for exercise because it's the worst. I really, 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 really hate exercise.
Join the American public.
Something that I have to force myself to do is clean. I am really good with I'm not a messy person generally. Like, I'm not a disgusting person, but I don't. As filth builds up over time, I have a high tolerance for it. I've got a very high tolerance for like a dirty kitchen floor, especially like, look, if I spill a drink on the kitchen floor, I'll clean it up. Yeah, obviously. But if a drink's volume of filth accrues over time, I'm fine with it.
Yeah. You get used to it. It's just like, drip by drip.
It's the same way I've gotten used to me getting fat. I'm like, your eyes just slowly adjust, so it's really hard to realize it. I finally realized I was fat, not because I couldn't see my dick, but because of how deep my navel has gotten. Like, I was doing my biannual inspection, and that's, by the way, that's once every 2 years, not twice a year. I was doing my biannual inspection, sent a search party in there, and I was aghast with how far my navel reaches these days. Like, it was like 2/3 of a finger, and my finger didn't know the difference, so I did get a little it reminded me of seeing Titanic, to be honest. I used to have a shallow navel. Now it's fucking gone.
It's the Marianas Trench. Who's someone you've never met, alive or dead, that you'd like to have lunch with?
You know what's crazy is part of the thing is for me to like extrapolate and do funny bits about these questions, or you just want answers straight up?
Whatever you want, I am here for.
Well, what's wild is that my life has been so lucky that there's actually been a few people that I would have answered at some point in my life, and it's happened.
All right, so brag and then give an answer.
So, like, Norm MacDonald is someone that I would probably have answered this question to, and I got to spend, like, a year and a half with that guy. Michael Ian Black is someone that I might have answered to this question to, and I've gotten to spend some time with that guy. So that's pretty cool. Now that I can answer, you know what? Conan O'Brien.
That's a great answer.
I would love to hang out with Conan for a little bit. I think that Conan and I would get along, and if not, if I couldn't have, like, a lasting friendship with Conan, if I couldn't parlay it into a lasting friendship, I would at least want to tell him how much he meant to me. And I didn't even know it, but like how big an influence he was on my formative years where I was developing a sense of humor and figuring out what my style of humor was going to be. I would love to be able to tell him that.
Yeah, that's so rad. What's your favorite, since we're speaking of late night talk show hosts, what's your favorite non-traditional curse word?
My favorite non-traditional curse word is, I like to say horse cocky. Or if I'm really mad, I'll say horse nonsense. So horse cocky is just supposed to be like a mix of like bullshit and bullcock and all kinds of things. But sometimes I'll say horse nonsense to be funny, but every once in a while I'll be genuinely angry and say horse nonsense, and then everyone around me is like fucking like stifling their laughter because I get angry so infrequently, and they know if they laugh at me, it's gonna get 10 times worse.
Yeah,
except
it just riles you up.
Totally my fault for saying horse nonsense.
What inanimate object would you be best friends with were it sentient?
Other than normal stuff, like my fucking cherry ride I got out in the driveway, like my little beast of a car out there.
What we whipping these days?
I don't know if you remember, but I'm still driving the same car I bought when I was doing Two Jacks in the Hole 15 years ago.
That's too much of a deep cut for me to remember.
I have a 2008 black Dodge Challenger first edition.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah.
So other than that, or like my Xbox 360 or something, I'd have to say I acquired my grandmother 35 years ago in her will left me an item that I wasn't able to get out to California until last summer. And it is an antique Wurlitzer jukebox. It's 70 years old.
Sick.
And has some of the original records in it. And so cool. It is just one of those things. You know, it's like it's so analog. Like, it's fascinating. Yeah. Like, people walk in and they're like, it has moving parts. Like, it is fucking lights. Like, you know, these are
not
things
like
that
digital.
It takes up space. Like, these are things we don't really have anymore, and mostly for the better, right? Like, mostly for the better. The fact that we don't have, like, you know, half of our houses now aren't taken up by like records and CDs and stuff. But this jukebox is just such a fucking delightful. It's just one of those things you look at, it just makes you happy to look at with the chrome and the lights and the records. So, if I could be pals. If I could have an anthropomorphic antique jukebox, that would be pretty fun.
Have the Pee-wee experience.
Oh, did he have a living jukebox? Or
I think so.
Okay.
I didn't watch that much Pee-wee's Playhouse, but like I think most things in the house were oddly anthropomorphic.
Yes, everything,
like, including
more or
the
less,
chair.
Yeah.
So like I wouldn't be surprised with an anthropomorphic jukebox.
That's what I would pick.
When you initially said that, there was this moment when you were initially telling that story. There was this moment where, like, I got my grandma's will. Like, it sounded like you obtained your grandma in her will somehow. It's like, wait, I thought this was going to go in a really weird direction.
No, I just wanted to make it clear that even though it was left to me 35 years ago, it's only been in my possession for like a year.
Oh, well.
So, yeah, it was just like the whole, like, wait for it and everything also makes it a little more sentimental.
Oh, yeah, it makes it so much more sweet.
Yeah.
Is there, like, a favorite? How good is the sound?
Awful. It's fucking really bad. It's actually unlistenable. Like, people are like, put it on at parties. And I'm like, all right, I will, but we're going to get about 2/3 of the way through the song before you're going to need me to turn it off because it's very, very distorted. I had a guy come look at it. He said it was going to be about $3,500. to get it where it needs to be,
Yeah.
which I think is worth it. But, you know, I'm a long way from being able to like write a check for $3,500 without worrying about like what if later in the year I might need that money. So,
Totally.
so it's kind of just it is just to look at the moment. But I feel like you're about to ask me a question about some of the music in there, and I will say there's a couple of songs in it that really get me amped, even though they're not 70-year-old songs. But there's Paul McCartney and Wings record in there. It's 45, so it's just singles. And but Live and Let Die is in there, and Knock 3 Times is in there, which is like just a fucking great song to hear coming from a jukebox.
Yeah, just feels right.
Yeah, there's a couple of Bill Withers tunes in there. Just some stuff that like really feels right coming out of an antique jukebox, even if the sound's a little distorted.
Totally. And with the Bill Withers songs, it's great because if it starts skipping, it just sounds like the song.
Yeah, exactly. We can get away with a little bit there.
Do you have a life hack you'd like to share with the class?
Sure. So this is, people think about The Secret, right? Some people think The Secret is a life hack.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really believe in The Secret, obviously, because I'm a rational human being. But there are people out there, for those who don't know, that believe if you think hard enough about something, your brain can literally rearrange the universe and deliver that thing to you. And there are other people out there that believe in something called karma, like a mystical force that keeps track of all the good you do in the world, and it gets redistributed to you. What they don't tell you is that it gets redistributed amongst all of your lives and not just the current one. And they believe in this, but they believe in this magical force of someone keeping score. I do not believe in either of those things in the way in which they're stated. However, my life hack is that if you are nice to people, if you are nice to everyone all of the time, some of those people will want to see you succeed. And the more people who want to see you succeed, the more likely it is that you will succeed. So therefore, if you are nice to everyone all of the time, you are more likely to be successful than if you are not. That's my life hack.
It's a very, while difficult to use life hack, it is very simple, and I love it, and it's beautiful. Yeah.
It is difficult to implement, especially I think that for, maybe it's easier for me to implement than for other people, right? Like I'm actually starting to come around to the thing that like our flaws aren't always a choice necessarily. So maybe people who are jerks like don't have a choice. Maybe it's just literally in their DNA to be jerks. Being nice to people does come relatively easy to me. I don't do it all of the time, obviously. If anyone here follows me on Twitter, they'll see I'm not nice to all of the people all of the time. But unless I find a reason not to be, I always start off in that my neutral position is a positive position, and I think that it cannot hurt you to go through life being as kind as possible. It can only help you.
Yeah. You're reminding me of, I think it might be on Bill Burr's last album on Paper Tiger, it's Jim Jeffries. Talks about how love is like the strongest force. He's like, he ramps it up. Just like, look, this is gonna sound corny as shit, but love always beats hate. It's like, it talks about that. It kind of reminds me of that. Just like, being good it does give a reward even if you don't see it.
And what's fucking awful is that comedians should not be the ones telling people this.
Yeah, you shouldn't be the arbiters of.
How did this become our job to be a voice of reason? Like, I don't want to be a voice of reason. I want to say ridiculous shit, but I can't because the people who are supposed to be the voice of reason are the ones saying ridiculous shit now.
Yeah, it's pretty whack. Yeah, like you got in this biz to fuck around and be the, in quotes, fool,
yes,
in the medieval sense, and now it's just like, fuck, I have to.
It's comedians who are keeping everyone else in check, telling the king he's being a fool. What? That's not how it's supposed to work.
If you were a condiment, which do you think you'd be?
Easy, Trojan Magnum.
Don't think that's a condiment.
Dude, I've got a whole drawer full of them. Has anyone done the condiment pun on your show yet?
No.
Huh? Am I the first?
You
Pioneer in comedy, as always. Ketchup. I would be ketchup. Most people would agree that they like me, but it's highly debatable just which things I belong on. Right? Like, everybody likes ketchup, but some people are like, I like ketchup on macaroni and cheese. And you're like, get the fuck out. And that's kind of like me. People are like, I like Joe Stapleton. I'm just not sure I like him like this.
That is so well thought out. Thank you so much for spending the time thinking on that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Growing up, what did you want to be other than ketchup?
Growing up and to an embarrassingly old age, I wanted to be Batman. And I'm talking like well beyond. I'm talking like until like 15 or 16 years old. I wanted to be Batman. What's funny is that 15 years old, I wanted to be Batman, and then when I was 35 years old, I realized not only am I not Batman, I'm not even a man. Like, I remember the week of my 35th birthday, I cried because my Xbox broke. You know, that's not being a man. So I did want to be Batman for a very, very long time. And part of what happened was like, when I was like, I want to say 12 or 13, I had a dream that I was Batman, and I woke up really, really sad. And I kind of, obviously, at that age, I was rational enough to know that there was no Batman and I was never going to be it. But maybe I could make movies and make people feel the same way that Batman made me feel. And so it was kind of at that moment that I decided that I mean, it was a pretty young age that once I realized Batman wasn't an option, what's the next closest thing? Oh, making Batman. So it was like around that age that I was like, I got to do something with movies or TV or whatever.
Is that something that you're still or doing that I'm not aware of, or still something that you're kind of seeking out and trying to realize? Things like the film.
Yeah. Things shifted from, wanting to be behind the scenes to be in front of the scenes pretty over the next few years as I found some confidence in life and realized that making people laugh was like something I was pretty good at and something I could use to like get what I wanted out of life. I hadn't quite come to that realization yet, so I was still just thinking about comic book characters and stuff like that at that age. But I am currently writing a comic book based. Sweet. Actually, I'm not writing it. It's written. It's currently being inked. It's mostly drawn. It's about 2/3 of the way drawn and being inked right now, loosely based on my life. And, I still, obviously, I never really tried to do film or even really tried to do TV. Even the TV I ended up doing was like kind of by accident and kind of I was in the right place at the right time. And I was more or less afraid to give anything my full effort in my 20s because I was afraid of failing. And somehow I ended up semi-succeeding anyway. But to your point, if somehow, working in poker, I was a consultant on a poker movie that came out last year. I had a very small part in it, non-speaking, but you can make me out in it at least. And, if I became more involved in mainstream things that included poker, or maybe even someday that didn't, that would be awesome. I'd be really glad for that. But also, and it's something I like to make sure I make clear on podcasts, nothing ever really happens for me without trying. So I'm not trying to be in film. Of course I would be, but I haven't put in much of an effort yet for any of that.
Is that something that you regret doing, or do you like the way things have rolled out with your approach? Do you like, if you could go back in time, would you have kind of, tried harder, dug deeper, and like went for it? Or do you think that this style just is kind of the way the world works, where, you just accept that serendipity will knock on your door and just leave yourself open to it?
It's a really great question, but I think if I went back but didn't know what the outcome was going to be, I think I would have to force myself to do things differently. I think that I got way too lucky. I don't think it's serendipity at all. I think it's mostly luck that I was in the right place at the right time, so that even my lack of effort into what I was doing ended up working out for me anyway. So without a guarantee of the dice roll going the same way, I would have to force myself to do more back in the day, especially comedy-wise. Especially, I wish that I had put the effort into comedy at 31 years old, that's when I really started taking it seriously. I wish that I had started doing that at 21 years old, because the comic I would be right now is probably a very good one, because I'm okay. Like, I'm pretty good.
But if you had 10 more years.
Right. If I had 10 more years, and especially just 10 more years of experience and confidence and connections and all that, it's like anything else. You wish, whether you bought into Bitcoin, you're like, I wish I bought into that 10 years. Actually, none of this is relevant now, but yeah. So it's, it's like anything else. I wish that I'd started on it a little bit sooner, and I also wish that I had been more of a self promoter. I had a very blue collar sort of work ethic when I first moved to LA, and I got a job at Mad TV, getting people food and getting people coffee. And my blue-collar work ethic was such that you are here to get coffee, and they hired you to get coffee and to make copies and to do a good job at that, not to hang out with the writers, not to try to schmooze your way into becoming a writer's assistant, not to try to get people to read your scripts, not for this, not for that. And I didn't believe in, like, being the guy being like, hey, I want to be an actor. Hey, I want to be a comedian. And, like, being the semi-annoying guy who's bothering people, but those people end up getting opportunities, and I shied away from that sort of thing because of this work ethic, and probably because I was afraid if I was the dog that caught the car. Okay, you've just been given an opportunity. What now? But so yeah, I think there's a couple of things I might have done a little bit differently, but I do not have a ton of regrets.
That's so cool that I totally resemble and understand that thought pattern of, don't, appreciate the circumstance. Don't try to ask and grip for more. You don't want to be, you don't want to have that attention. And then if you do get it, you caught the car. Now, what do you do?
Correct.
Just that idea that you're likely to fail. And so you don't want to even chase the car, because then if you catch it and fail, you're the idiot. Where if you stay complacent, you're the good guy, in quotes, you're not trying to reach above your station or whatever.
Yes. And also another thing that, these things are all tied together is that when I said I wasn't putting an effort in, I was calling myself a writer, but I wasn't writing anything. I wasn't even writing sketches for Mad TV. If Mad TV had turned around and said, all right, Stapes, you're up. What do you got? I'd have been nothing. So, the effort and the self-promotion have to go hand in hand. You have to be doing everything you can to put your best foot forward and to be ready for when those opportunities finally do present themselves.
So if you were going to schmooze with people and you find yourself invited to a rap party or an after party, what would you want to wear other than your normal garb to look extra and attract the right attention?
Those things did happen. If we're talking about a rap party, I would wear a suit to the rap party, wanting to make sure that I was the most overdressed person there, as far as what I could afford.
Yeah.
It would usually involve me wearing some kind of loud tie also, because I would have thought something like that was funny back in the day.
Yeah.
But no, you wouldn't really need it to be a rap party for that. Where I worked was oh God, so cliche. It kind of was like a family. We all knew each other. Everybody talked. Everybody was friendly. There was no people that I would have needed a party to have access to.
Sure.
So there would have been better occasions than that. Parties were a good place to try to see where you stand with some of the cast members and dance up on them, though, and see how quickly they walk away from you. That was kind of fun. Turns out one of the cast members was digging on me a little bit, and it turns out that one of the writers had a thing for her, and when he saw us dancing, he stormed off.
Whoa.
He stormed off, and guess who she chose?
The guy with the flashy tie?
The TV writer. instead of the guy that was sharing a house in the Hollywood Hills with 6 other people.
To the surprise of everyone.
That's right. We were all shocked. Yeah, so rap parties were super, super fun, but also I was in charge of throwing them. So there was a little extra pressure on me there too.
What would you say goes into like a good flashy tie instead of like a bad flashy tie?
Dude, I don't know if there is such a thing as a good flashy tie. My tastes have changed a lot since then. I was definitely, for the first, till I was like 28 or 29, till I started dating a very successful woman who enjoyed the finer things in life. I was one of those people who was, and I think you can find people like this still today without getting political, but you may know what I'm talking about. I couldn't afford anything nice, and so I thought anything nice was garbage, and and I was going to be happy with the terrible things I could afford.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, like, I can't afford a fancy, I don't know what's fancy, a chain wallet, so I'll just wear this fanny pack instead, and I'll be like really, really proud of my fanny pack because fuck all you coastal elites. I'm a real person here.
Yeah, like the Gen X mental identity, just like fuck everything.
Exactly. Like, you don't want to have
losers.
me in your club?
Yeah.
Fine. I don't want to be a part of your club in the first place. Suck it. And then eventually I did sort of get to experience some of those nicer things, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty nice, actually. Like,
these chain wallets do kind of slap.
Yeah, it's kind of, the nicer jeans actually do kind of feel better and last longer, huh? It turns out. Oh, nicer shoes do get me more attention from females, huh? Turns out I like attention from females. Turns out my principles of not wanting to dress to impress people, turns out that was only because I was never going to impress anyone anyway.
It was this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy of sorts.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of such things, what poor man luxury do you still enjoy to this day?
What does that mean, poor man luxury?
Kind of like Kraft mac and cheese, the dollar menu, kind of like something that if you were living at the kind of like tail end of financial society, that would be a bit of a nice thing, still holds that glimmer.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like there's definitely still love fast food. I would, if you flip the prices on cheap food and expensive food, I would still eat the Big Mac at a much higher price. I always say I don't trust Michelin star ratings because McDonald's doesn't have one. Like, McDonald's is fucking delicious. Anyone who does not think McDonald's is delicious, I don't care what your opinion is on food. I don't no interest in what you have to say. You have to at least confess, yes, McDonald's is delicious. So I like fast food, something that I consider to be a luxury. That air conditioning is something, that I feel very blessed in my life, that I never have to be in a situation where there's not air conditioning, and if I am, I'm like, we're leaving. That's still a really big deal. What the heck is, like, I mean, I still buy, every time I go to the grocery store, I buy ramen, I buy Kraft macaroni and cheese.
Just in case the zombies attack, man, you gotta have those.
I get all of my liquor at Costco.
I mean, that's just that people that don't buy their liquor at Costco that go to Costco. I'm just sad for them, because it is like as good or better, and the prices are just better every single time.
Yeah, the prices are absolutely phenomenal, especially we throw a lot of parties at my house. So, okay, so recently, here's something that like was like a poor kid dream. The last party I threw at my house, I rented a snow cone machine. That was pretty fun. That was like a childhood dream. I have like a little mini arcade.
Did you have the bouncy house outside as well?
We thought about that, but it was going to be my only fear is I don't mind spending money, right? Spending money on a good time is like totally fine with me. I don't care. What I don't like is wasting money. And so if I get a bounce house and like everyone's too cool for it, or like nobody wants to use it, or it's too hot, or it feels awkward because it's for kids, then I'll feel bad.
Totally.
So I was just like, let's just stick with the snow cone machine. I don't know how the bounce house is going to go.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff I love doing. I hired an ice cream truck to come to the house for a friend's mother's memorial.
That's rad.
A couple of years back. We did a taco trek for my girlfriend's birthday a couple years ago. So these are not particularly rich people activities. It's kind of like, being like, I always considered my life to be a little bit like Entourage, but if he was only making like $80,000 a year. And I was like the guy making $80,000 when all of my friends were making like 35 and 40. And so, this little like fake rich things that I could do, like, we're just going to get like a taco truck to come by for a couple hours. That's exactly where I like to be.
That's rad. I love that. Appreciate the finer things within your budget.
Exactly. Like I'm not taking everyone out to the Palm, but if you want to roll through the drive-thru and just rattle off all the stuff you could possibly eat, let's go for it.
That's cool. What's the next book, graphic novel, TV show, or movie you've been putting off, like that you really want to like just enjoy?
So there's a couple of ways to put things off, right? Like sometimes I put things off because I'm saving them. Because I'm like, oh, well, when I watch this, it's over. Like I did that with Game of Thrones, the first season of Game of Thrones. I watched like the first episode and I was like, this is too good. Like this, I need to like ration this out. Now when I put things off, it's mostly because like it's just there's just so much content. Like how could you ever watch all of the things that you need to watch? And most of it is good, right? Like almost everything is good these days. There's like very little bad stuff out there. But as far as what have I been putting, I've been putting off seeing Top Gun for some reason. I don't know why. I've heard it's great. The first one, for all of its flaws at the time, was like a pretty fucking cool movie for me. I'm one of those, straight white American males that just grew up thinking Top Gun was about the coolest thing ever.
Totally.
And it's just, I don't know. I'm just having a hard time getting out to see it. Part of it is that I moved recently, and I used to be able to walk to a movie theater. Now I can't.
Dude, that's rad.
Yeah.
Being able to walk to things that you do, like walking to a bar, walking to, a cafe, walking to like little things like that is so, especially in LA, but it's just so valuable.
It's
so
night
good.
And day. Like leaving the house. I don't know. I'm sure the pandemic played into it. I'm sure that the fact that like I have a house now, an actual house now, and a girlfriend. We've been together for, I think we're going into our 5th year. We just have a great time here. Our house, we love it so much. Like the thought of leaving it is just like really tough. And a car, even harder, right? It's like a 10-minute drive from here, but I'm like, man, if I could walk there even in 25 minutes or 30 minutes, no problem. I love a walk. You don't have to think when you're walking, right? I mean, you get to think, but you don't have to like really worry about like, driving and taking your life in your hands and traffic and yada, yada, yada. So it's just night and day between walking somewhere and driving.
Totally. All right. Well, lastly, before we throw it to commercial break, if you could have listeners of this podcast hear one song you were choosing, which would it be?
Well, this was an interesting question because I wasn't sure if I wanted to like, we were talking earlier about this, about how like, I don't want to put something out there that I actually really like and then have someone tell me that it's stupid.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make everyone listen to a song that's really stupid, but is also kind of slaps at the same time.
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
Yeah, this song is like, take it for what you will. If you want to be like, oh my God, this is like the worst thing I've ever heard. First of all, you can't say that because empirically it's a fucking fantastic piece of music. But it may not be your favorite. Either way, I'm going to get delight out of knowing I punished you by listening to this. Isn't it like a 9-minute song too?
Yeah, it's like 8.5 minutes or something.
Yeah, that was part of it too. So here you go. If I could make anyone listen to anything, it would be 8.5 minutes of Through the Fire and the Flames by Dragon Force.
And with that, we're going to throw it to our first break. Feel free to stick around and enjoy the totally real commercial, or take a minute to enjoy Through the Fire and Flames by Dragon Force. Or if you really wanted to hear a song from a previous episode, check out the playlist on Spotify, Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast Song Rex. It's a long title, I know.
Don't worry, there's a link in the description.
Either way, see you in a jiffy. Hey, you. Yes, you. Yes, I'm talking to you. Have you ever wanted to record audio? Or perhaps fiddle with recorded audio? Maybe even record audio of a fiddle and then fiddle with said audio? Well, now you can with Audacity? With all the run-of-the-mill bells and whistles, you'll be confusing yourself with a tech in no time. But won't that cost lots of money? Because with my snow-blowing habit, I can only afford it. Ain't gonna cost shit. Audacity is free and easy enough to use that even a snow-blowing son of a gun can use it too. Welcome back. So I'm here with Joe Stapleton. Joey, what is your passion that you brought with you today?
The passion of comedy. I hope that's not too broad of a passion, but it is all I want to do in this world is make people laugh. And I get really frustrated when other stuff gets in the way with that. Obviously, you know, I'm very lucky to have the job I have, but I also have to talk about poker. Mm-hmm. I also have to work in the poker industry. I also have to deal with things regarding gambling and, you know, and there's a lot working for a big corporation. There's a lot of other considerations to be made. I have to, obviously, we live in a day and age where you have to consider your jokes very carefully. Mm-hmm. I have to consider my jokes very carefully. One, in that I would like to keep my job, and two, I genuinely don't want to hurt people's feelings either. Yeah. You know, you're not doing your job as a comedian if you're hurting a big portion of the population. Do I think that sometimes we're being a little too sensitive? Of course I do. Of course I do. But also, I would rather not be a jerk. I would rather be too sensitive and not upset people and not decide I am the arbiter of what is allowable and what is funny and what isn't. And I have decided that your feelings on the subject don't matter. Like, it's just not the stage I'm at just yet.
Totally. When did you first get kind of on, like, when did the idea of like doing comedy and having this be a thing that you wanted to do first start to like really come into your life?
There's a couple of key moments I remember from my life. I don't know when what started, but some things that I'll just like plunk in there. I had a Mad Magazine subscription, which my parents were pretty strict, but for some reason they didn't care about this. Mad Magazine subscription, where I was like introduced to like the fact that comedy was like a thing, mm-hmm. people appreciated. And then I wasn't allowed to really to have a TV in my room at home or to be up past like 8:30 at night. But I would go to my grandma's house sometimes. And one time I happened to discover Saturday Night Live because there was a TV in the bedroom where I slept at my grandma's house. And it just so happened to be the episode where Macaulay Culkin was hosting.
Oh, rad.
And so Macaulay Culkin and I are like the exact same age. So I tuned in. I was like, there's a fucking kid hosting a TV show? And they're just doing skits? Like, what is this? This is the funniest shit. This is the best thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Mm-hmm. And I got totally hooked on Saturday Night Live. And I got totally hooked. I used to go home and, like, do the characters for my parents. And it was incredibly difficult for me. I was a very, very shy child. Mm. But I still felt the urge to do these things and I mostly ripped off Mad Magazine and Saturday Night Live for the first bunch of years, and I was really, really shy. But when the real big turning point was I was like a pretty miserable middle schooler, chubby, all-boys school, Catholic military school. I was an overachiever, so my classmates hated me. I was like the valedictorian of our class. I was in advanced classes. Like, I was in the 8th grade, but they would send me to like 10th grade Spanish. Those kids fucking hated me. You know, just imagine being in 10th grade and then like this fucking snot-nosed 8th grader gets different uniforms even, right? Like, I didn't even match. Because I was in middle school, they were in high school, and I was really, really miserable. And then something miraculous happened. So the reason I was going to that school is because I lived in a bad neighborhood, and my parents didn't want me going to public school, so they were scrimped and scraped to send me to Catholic school. And then in between 8th and 9th grade, middle school and high school, we moved. and we moved to the suburbs, to like the rich town with the nice schools. And I realized that I had the ability to reinvent myself, that nobody at this new school knew who I was. They didn't know anything about me. They didn't know I was an overachiever. They didn't know that I was a nervous, shy, easy to cry, sensitive, scaredy cat. I could be a new person at this school, and I decided I was going to be the well-liked, funny person. And I wasn't very good at it. I'm not going to lie. I was not very good at being the well-liked, funny person. But over the years, I slowly built up some confidence. Like by the time I had reached senior year, I was my own sort of little Zach Morris in that I thought I was super cool. Some of the people thought I was super cool, but I wasn't like one of the super cool kids. But I was like a legend in my own mind. And me and my tight group of friends thought we were the coolest people in school. And I'm not sure if there's ever been like a movie or a TV show to tackle something like that. I think occasionally it'll be like a part of some other show. Like, we kind of were gigantic losers, but we didn't know it. We thought we were by far the funniest, coolest kids in high school, and everyone else was just a jerk. But it was that sort of those couple of years where I realized that being funny was a great way to cover up for other flaws that you might have. And it made it so that if you were sarcastic and if you were the person ripping on other people, you never really had to be exposed yourself, that you could sort of hide your own insecurities by flaunting everyone else's.
That's interesting. So there was a time in my life where I kind of fancied myself a funnier man than until years later I realized, no, that wasn't really the case. But I would do the exact opposite. Instead of pointing out other people's flaws to kind of move the spotlight away from me. I don't know if you've ever done this as like a kid or, you know, a sad adult such as myself, but turning the spotlight on myself and kind of beating, not bullies, but other people to the punch. So like pointing out your worst flaw before they can, so that they have no meat to bite on.
Sure, yeah, and that's part of it too, right? Self-deprecating humor is like a huge thing. It's definitely something that I've employed. I eventually moved away from that sort of cynicism toward the world and toward everyone else and started shining the spotlight on myself in that way later on. Probably in my 20s, I adapted more of that approach. And the only drawback to that is that if you mean it too much, people pick up on that, and it's also not super funny.
Yeah, it's just sad.
It's sad, and also, like, you go through life, like me being like, I don't know why, like my 20s. Like, I moved to L.A. when I was 20. I graduated college a little early, and I moved out to L.A. like a week later. And from age 20 to 27 or 28, I was like, why don't girls like me? Like, I don't, like, why are girls like these confident assholes? And I would be like, you know, a self-deprecating sort of loser. You know, I would point that out before anyone else could, and maybe it's not something that anyone would have pointed out anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that was part of the evolution also. Luckily, I feel like from my late 20s onward, I feel like I've struck a good balance. And if anything, I've maybe come around to being too confident, and every once in a while, I like to be brought back down to earth.
So earlier we kind of talked about, like, the first, you know, little bit we talked about, you're working on a bit and you're trying, you know, you tried it on stage and it wasn't quite going well. On average, what would you say, like, how many times do you attempt a bit before it gets binned? Is there, like, you know, not like a method or anything like that, but do you have like just a kind of average amount of times before you just like bin a bit, or do you like believe in a bit and keep working on it for years?
So this answer could maybe take up the second hour of this podcast. So there's a lot of factors that work when it comes to stand-up, and one of them that I'll start with earliest on. So there's no real answer to your question because it depends how strongly do I feel about the bit in the first place. How controversial is the bit? Where have I actually tried the bit? Now, when I said I've tried this bit that hasn't worked, or like kind of worked a little bit a few times, most comics are out the comics that are successful, the comics that do well, are out doing comedy 6 to 7 nights a week. Let's say 5 to 7 nights a week.
Yep.
I do comedy maybe 3 or 4 times a month. So I'm not out there putting in the same work they are.
Mm-hmm.
When I do comedy, and it's not a show, right? When I'm going to practice comedy, I go to a place called the Mexican Village on Tuesday nights, and out on the patio, there's an open mic. At which point, I am doing comedy in front of 7 to 15 other comedians who are just waiting for their turn.
Mm-hmm.
So with taking that into account, doing a bit, I know if I do a bit and it works, it really works.
Mm-hmm.
I know if I do a bit and it doesn't work, it doesn't mean anything. Because that's a very tough room to get to laugh. There's certain things they won't laugh at that a real audience would.
Yeah.
There's certain things they will laugh at that a real audience wouldn't. It is very hard to get a read on that. And also, I am more nervous doing comedy in front of those guys than I am in front of a real audience, because I just know that they're a much tougher audience. And so my performance isn't always good when I'm delivering these things, practicing, trying them out. So I would say in many cases, I probably abandon bits way too soon. I'll probably try them, I would say 2 to 3 times, unless I think of a new twist on them, which is part of it too, right? So like, you do the bit, and then you're like, okay, well, that Nick Fury badge joke kind of worked. Like, maybe I need to focus more on that. And so, you obviously tweak it and do things on it. But in general, if I can't get a laugh at that open mic within 3 tries, I probably give up on it. But there's been certain things. There's one thing I tried a whole bunch of times. I don't want to give you the example because it's still in my act, and it's like my big closer now. Like,
totally.
The bit works so well, it's my big closer, and I believed in it. I was like, I know that I can make this bit funny, and I did it over and over and over and tweaked it and finally figured out it's a bit that's super, super dirty, and I was using one crazy dirty word in it, and I took that word out and made it softer, and you still know what I'm talking about. I just don't say, like, I don't say the word cum anymore in the bit, which is like a harsh word. You may have just bleeped it. I don't know. I no longer say that.
Bleep it, yeah.
I say finish instead of the C word, and now the audience isn't quite as grossed out, and they can actually laugh about the thing I'm saying. But it took me a whole bunch of tries, but I really believed in that bit. I was like, I know this is funny. What am I fucking up? And eventually figured it out. But it's really hard because it's kind of like the movie Groundhog Day, where you're like trying to figure out your best way to go through the day, except for imagine if the day is always different. There's always different variables. There's, the way that people react to things changes in the real world based on your setting, what time it is, how tired are people, how many comics went on before you, did someone just do, like, there's just a million factors. It's impossible to like crunch the numbers on it. You just have to do it and do it and do it and do it.
Yeah, that's so cool. So there's a couple bits of kind of intel I'd love to snipe off you here.
Sure.
How much time do you spend kind of crafting and working on comedy through like an average week? Whether it be going to and doing stand-up, writing at home, or just kind of ruminating?
I mean, it's so difficult to say because ruminating is like 24/7. I'm never not thinking about a way to make something funny. So it's hard to count that because otherwise I'd be working on comedy 24/7. But as far as like actively sitting down and like we'll call it setting aside time. Right? We'll call it. So and again, it depends what you mean by comedy, because like comedy is part of all of my jobs. Everything I do has a comedy aspect to it. Stand-up comedy, yeah. It's probably just I don't know, 3 or 4 hours a week. It's not a lot. It's not enough.
Do you think you're ever going to make it enough, or is this just like, I don't want to in any way be derogatory, but is this like a kind of like a side hobby, a fun little thing? Is this something you're working towards? Where do you see it now, and where do you want it to be realistically?
Yeah, I get asked this question a lot, and the weird thing is all I want to be is a good comic who performs. Unfortunately, the way that the world perceives it and works is that there are these certain benchmarks that you haven't like really made it unless you hit them. Yep. And yes, of course, I'm interested in those benchmarks as well. The problem is that to do it right, to do comedy right, requires more time than I am able to give it. Not more than I'm willing to give it, just more than I am able to give it. I have a pretty successful career outside of comedy, and not only does that take up a big chunk of my time, but it also takes up a big chunk of my energy and a big chunk of my hunger. Mm-hmm. So when I get back from EPT Barcelona, and I've been in Europe for 14 days, that night I get home, my first instinct isn't to be like, well, there's a mic at 6 p.m. I can probably make it. My first instinct is to go, hey, man, I just crushed it at my job that pays most of my salary. Like, I deserve a couple days to myself. Mm-hmm. I deserve to put my feet up and spend some of my money, maybe have some people over, have a little party. So between those factors, it's very difficult for me to put the time in that I want to, that I need to. Uh-huh. So, and I just don't quite have the motivation to do it the exact right way. Uh-huh. I'm putting a huge push this summer, a huge push. I am at my own expense doing a mini tour
Sweet.
Of the country. I'm doing a week in Vegas. I'm doing a night in Vail, Colorado, and I've got some things lined up in Illinois, Wisconsin, maybe Iowa. And I've more or less told these places, hey, I'm a comedian that like can afford to get myself out there. If you want to put me on some shows, which is kind of like buying your way into it. I understand that. But so I'm making a big push to go do a bunch of comedy and to try to, and then if this at the end of this summer when I've spent, I'm doing a week in Scotland. I'm doing the Edinburgh Film Festival. The Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Yep. And if by the end of this summer more organic opportunities aren't happening, I might just sort of take a back seat for a while and put even less effort into it because I literally can't afford physically or financially to keep doing it this way.
Mm-hmm. Is this something, and I apologize if this is too much of a deep cut, feel free to let me know and I'll pass on it. Does your approach, or like, are you happy with your approach, or does it like bother you, the circumstance that you're in? Like, is this kind of like, does it have bittersweet moments where you're just always reminded of like, you don't feel like you're doing enough and that you're in between like putting in more time and being acceptable of your kind of effort, or you almost want to put in less time so that like you're not putting yourself out there as much and it's a little bit more kind of casual?
I'm pretty okay with it the way it is, in that like I've always been the kind of person, like I'm not super easy on myself, but I'm not crazy hard on myself either. And so the fact that I am successful in comedy in other areas, satiates whatever sort of slap on the wrist I want to give myself for not being like a more successful stand-up. Like when I'm out there at these open mics, I see comics that are like way better than me and put in way more effort than me, and they would fucking kill to have my job. Yeah. Like they would absolutely, like, they're like, what are you doing here? We're all here so that we can get a job hosting poker shows or hosting game shows or whatever. Mm-hmm. And you're just, and I'm kind of there as a hobby / passion, right? Like I'm passionate about it. So when I think of things in those terms, I'm not super disappointed. I don't feel bad about it. I feel like my progress has been pretty solid given how little time I'm able to put into it. So I am okay with it. There are certain aspects of it that I really am not okay with and are really starting to wear me down. One is that most of the shows I do, there is some expectation for me to bring a crowd. And that part is getting quite taxing. That part is getting quite stressful on me to like, I'm very lucky that I have like more of a fan base than like most comedians in LA, right? Like I'm probably like top 5 percentile for fan base as far as, you know, when you compare all the comics. But, you know, so that means like I get a couple people that show up to every show, but when it's like an important show, I still got to hassle my friends and my family. Hey, guys, I know you came out last month. I could really use some people here, blah, 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 blah. That part is getting very grating. That part is getting very stressful. Too much for me to deal with. Too much for me. I'm not big on, like, I understand what people's time is worth and how valuable it is when people come see my shows and the money that they spend. And I usually pick up the tickets and most of the drinks because, again, I'm in the position to do that. But, like, you know, just someone's time on like a Wednesday night. Like, it's just a big ask to come sit and watch 2 hours of comedy. So that part is getting untenable for me, and I don't know how much longer I can do that.
Totally. Well, to switch to a happier note before we switch to more of an obnoxious note, what would you say are some of your, like, obviously, you know, Mad Magazine and Saturday Night Live, are there some stand-up comedians that kind of got you going into this avenue of comedy, or that, you know, you really idolized or kind of almost mimicked early on?
Yeah, believe it or not, so I'll just name some from over the years, but Seinfeld, obviously a big one. Conan, a big influence. Probably my biggest stand-up influence early on. Like, there were a couple of specials I saw that were like pretty good, but didn't really. I didn't stick with that person. But like the first maybe stand-up I became like an actual fan of. There were 2 of them. Dennis Leary. No Cure for Cancer, which people now say he like ripped off of Bill Hicks. I don't really have an opinion on that or not, but I know that Dennis Leary is like a tremendous performer. He did 2 comedy albums I listened to nonstop, and Dennis Miller was just a huge influence for me. I was a little too young to get him when he was on Saturday Night Live, but when he started doing his HBO show and used to do those rants at the top of the show, I was like, oh my God, like this is the fucking funniest, smartest shit that, like, I was like, oh, you can do like smart comedy too is also a thing. And I used to buy all of his tapes. Like, he used to put the rants out on tape, and I would listen to them in my car. So those were 2 early stand-up influences. Sinbad, I remember being a big fan of as a kid. Richard Jeni, Andy Kindler, Mark Maron. Obviously, we're talking way before. I'm talking about what happened was Comedy Central came out when I was 12 or 13. And so all of the people that were big fixtures on Comedy Central in the beginning ended up being huge to me. The Kids in the Hall, obviously not stand-ups, but something I was exposed to at that same age. Dr. Katz, Professional Therapist, was a cartoon where where comedians would come on and do their bits as like therapy. And so I got kind of hooked on that and all those comedians, Dave Attell, Sarah Silverman, some really, really good shit.
All right, now from something so passionate to something so preposterous.
Yeah.
Joe Stapleton, what is your preposterous peeve?
You know how you may remember this from back in the day. This peeve hasn't changed. Back in Huff and Stapes, one of my bits, one of my pet peeves was this really is such a bummer too. It really brings people down. I don't even know why. So, cheers. Okay, so when you give a toast and you say, all right, to the class of 2024, and you clink your glasses, that is called a toast. That's called giving a toast. To the bride and groom, that's a toast. My preposterous pet peeve is when people call that making a cheers, doing a cheers, cheersing. Hey, let's cheers to this. Cheers is not a verb. Toast is a verb. You're toasting. Cheers is an exclamation. It is what you say when you toast. So no one ever says like, oh man, I can't be around fucking black pepper. Black pepper makes me achoo. I got some black pepper up my nose the other day. I chewed for the next 45 seconds straight. No, you didn't achoo. You sneezed. You sneezed. You did. Achoo is what you say when you sneeze.
Yeah.
Cheers is what you say when you toast. So what happens is people are like, hey, let's do a cheers, and then my girlfriend will look at me at the party and she'll be like, don't
Don't fucking do
Don't
it.
fucking say anything. And I'll be like, okay, I'm not going to do it. And then everyone will be like, come on, we're doing a cheers. We're cheersing. Everyone, there's a cheers. We're about to make a cheers. A cheers is happening. We're cheersing. We're cheersing. And I'm just like, and she's just like trying to like grab me by the hand. And I'm like, no, we're not cheersing. There's no such thing as cheersing. We're doing a toast. Would you like to say cheers during the toast? That's great. We're not cheersing. We're toasting. And then I go into the whole achoo thing, and she's just like, please stop. And no one, there's not ever even a person who's on my side, which is very weird because I'm right.
Oh, no, absolutely, yeah.
But that's my preposterous pet peeve. I'm very, very laid back in many, 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 many ways. But that, I'm just like, nah, we're not letting this go.
The blood boils rather quickly.
Yeah.
When did you first notice that, like, peeve start to, like, rear its ugly head? Do you remember how young you were when you found out about it? And, like, also, how did you find out about it? Is that something like you got corrected by like a parent or family member, or how'd that come about?
No, if I had to guess, it would be my like mid-20s hatred of women. Just like feeling really rejected by women and like resenting women and seeing a bunch of girls having a good time and calling it cheersing. And then just wanting to pick apart that. That would be that's probably where it came from. Just sort of all
a
the
good,
things.
Healthy place.
Yeah, exactly. All the things in my life. It's the same reason why I don't like craps. Because I always look at everyone having high-fiving each other and like fucking playing grab ass at the craps table. It's like the cool kids table that I'm not invited to. So when I see people cheersing or playing craps, I'm like, what can I do to ruin their good time? Like, how can I make myself feel better about the fact that I'm not involved in cheersing? Also, just sounds weird. Cheersing.
It does sound really weird. It does sound like a made up word, to be sure.
What other verbs end in S?
Do you have a story of when this really came to a head? Like, is there a like just blowout of an experience you had where you couldn't take it anymore?
Not specifically, but I will say that there's been a few times where I've been on like a really terrible date or at a party with someone who's already being kind of insufferable. And I'll sort of lay the bait for them to say, let's cheers or let's have a cheersing or whatever it is. And that way I'm like, it's kind of like when someone's like, when you're out in the alley, not that this ever happened to me in many years, but when you're out in the alley, you're like, you hit me first, let's go. Like, throw the first punch. So I like just lay the bait for them to say cheersing. And then the people around me know what I'm doing, and they have my full support because they hate everyone and everything about the situation too. And they're like, oh, Joe's about to get him. Joe's about to annoy the fuck out of these people with the cheersing routine, with the fucking achoo part. God, I hope he does achoo. I love it when he gets into the achoo bits. And I've been able to like completely bury a situation with it on multiple occasions. So no specific story, but just a couple times where I'm like, I'm having the worst time. Like, let's just completely bury it.
It's like the inverse of putting a cherry on top. It's great.
Yes, exactly. Like, just make sure that one of my big mottos in life, which I learned at Mad TV, in the art department, they had this sign hanging on the wall. Now, Mad TV, obviously, they did a lot of parodies, right? Like, they were trying to, like, mimic a lot of things. And they had this thing on the wall that said, if you can't make it look good, make it look bad on purpose. And that's sort of stuck with me over the years. And it's just like making things look good. It's just in general, like, okay, for example, like, I'm not the most polished broadcaster. I'm not the most polished TV show host. And I've kind of been able to make that my brand over the years is like, no, like, I'm the guy who fucks up.
Yeah.
Like, that's my thing. Like, STAPES. So there's no expectation. Like, if I don't fuck up, people are like, well, why isn't he doing the STAPES thing?
Mm-hmm.
So I've just been able to somehow parlay that into like a part of my thing is like, I'm the screw up. Luckily.
That's my thing. That's great. You remind me of something, and then my brain just went completely blank.
Well, we're having a lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh no, it's like you can see this in film especially when they're doing animation or like set design. If they can't go to like +7 value range, they dip below 3.
Right.
Because you don't want to be in the uncanny valley of sorts of like, appearance. You either want it to look intentionally tacky, a la like, like South Park or something like that, where it looks kind of like hokey and that like adds to
Correct
the kind of joie de vivre, or you want to, get glitz and glamour, but you don't want to be in this like, what kind of camera did they shoot this on? You want it to be like, oh wow, this is like, 8-bit, or this is, like,
if you're trying
8mm.
to mimic Cheers, to bring back to the word Cheers, if you're trying to mimic the set from Cheers, you don't want people going, are they trying to mimic Cheers? It kind of looks like Cheers. You're the one that go, holy shit, that looks just like Cheers, or ha, it's so funny, like it looks terrible, but there's a guy that looks like Norm sitting there.
Yeah, like you have Cheers written in crayon, or you want it to be gilded. You don't want it to be like a framed poster. You want it to either like go like bottom of the barrel or top shelf.
Mediocrity in general is just something we all want to stay away from.
Yeah, exactly. And with that great life lesson, we're going to head to our second ad break, but don't go anywhere, because when we get back, Stapes is going to enter the lightning round. Do you need 100 pounds of butter? Come on down to Company Street Company. What if I need 30 gallons of olive oil? Come on down to Company Street Company.
But what if I just want one flatless bird roasted for a reasonable price?
Come on down to Company Street Company. Okay, but... Just come on down to Company Street Company. We have everything for a better price. Free snacks, and employees who don't want to kill themselves. Or you, because we treat them like fucking human beings. Yeah, but... Yup. Just get your ass down to Company Street Company, where the only sketchy thing we've ever done is enable frozen orange juice hoarders. And we are back. Joe, are you ready to enter the lightning round?
Lightning round?
Yes.
All right, put however much time it takes to bake this cookie on the clock. Joe, is there a price for you to give up your passion forever?
Yes.
Make the food or do the dishes?
Make the food.
Are soups smoothies?
No.
Vests or opera gloves?
Vests or what?
Vests or opera gloves?
Vests.
Did you ever cheat on a test in school?
Yes.
Are you out of touch, or is it the children who are wrong?
The children are so wrong.
Shakira's voice in Danny DeVito's body, or Danny DeVito's voice in Shakira's body?
Danny DeVito's voice in Shakira's body.
Would you rather have your inner monologue sound like Gilbert Gottfried or Fran Drescher?
It already sounds like Gilbert Gottfried. I'll stick with him.
Would you rather read the cue cards while wearing the crown, or live in a hovel and speak your mind?
Cue cards, baby. Come on.
Do you create your own thoughts or just listen to them?
Ooh, wow. Fuck you. Listen to them.
Take out the trash or play Tetris?
Tetris.
You're having the best day of your life. What happens next? Another amazing thing or something terrible?
Another amazing thing.
Pineapple on pizza or fist fight?
Pineapple on pizza.
You come across a stranger just struck by a car. Their dying breath is, "This is very important. Please tell my wife she's a dirty harlot." Do you or do you not tell their wife?
Do not tell their wife.
Is professional wrestling cool or lame?
Cool.
Could you eat 37 of your favorite food for $5,000 in a 1-hour time limit?
Yes.
Congratulations.
You've survived the lightning round.
Oh, wow. I was close there for a second. Who the fuck came up with, do you create your own thoughts? Are you listening to them? That has no business being on this podcast. There's an alliteration. I guess they sort of go together.
Thank you, Greg Hatch. You're always
Greg Hatch, you're annoying.
Well, before we move on to your prize, I, like many listeners at home, would like to now know, what is your favorite food that you could eat 37 of for $5,000 in a 1 hour time limit?
Chicken wings.
Oh yeah, easy.
Done. By the way, I got food bet jokes. You can't eat 37 of literally anything other than maybe chicken wings. Hot dogs, obviously the best in the world, do like 50, but you can't eat 37 burgers. You can't eat 37 donuts. 37 eggs probably, but whose favorite food is eggs?
Birds, probably. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, something.
What are we talking? Okay, first off, what is your preferred flavor of chicken wings?
Buffalo, not super hot, but in the medium hot range.
Ranch or blue cheese?
I'm actually more of a ranch fan.
This guy gets it. California, baby.
Yeah, I don't know. Blue cheese, the whole thing about blue cheese is it's ranch with rotten cheese in it. Like, just leave out the rotten cheese. Give me the ranch. I'm good.
Yeah, exactly. All right, man. Since you've survived the lightning round, what lightning round question would you like to ask me and in turn be asked of future guests?
Okay. Hold on a second. I'll make sure I get my own wording right. Courtesy flush or light a match?
Courtesy flush.
I'm a light a match guy. There you go. Great question.
Not much. I'm worried that the pyrotechnics are going to feel something in me and bad things will occur. So I'm just gonna press the flush button. It's also easier. I don't have to find a match, light it, and then put it out and worry I'm not gonna accidentally burn their house down.
Yeah, no, there are definitely some drawbacks I hadn't even considered.
But I mean, you do look old school cool lighting a match. Especially if you get to like light a candle, light the match, then the candle. Anyway, is there anything, as we come to a close, is there anything you want to plug, shout out, you'd like to give, places people can find you or your content?
Yes, I would love if folks gave me a follow on social media, if only to find out where my shows are. I don't care if you interact with me on social media. I don't really care about social media at all, but it's still the best way of getting out the word. Like, oh, hey, I'm going to do live comedy. I promise my live comedy is less insipid and annoying than my soapbox Twitter. And I'm so sorry that the world's so fucked up that I, a comedian, have to be a political activist. I mean, it's just fucking unbelievable. Ignore those parts. I know it can be annoying, but at my comedy shows, there's nothing like that. We're just there to laugh and have a good time. I very rarely say anything that would make someone feel like that I'm choosing sides or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So Twitter, it's at Stapes. Instagram is at InstaStapes. Those are the great places to keep in touch with me, because I would love to have some of your listeners at one of my shows eventually.
Righteous.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Go ahead.
And every Monday, I do live commentary of the Sunday Million for Poker Stars. That is a fun little day. We go live about 10:30 in the morning. We do live commentary. We hang out, have a good time, tell jokes, watch some poker. And my poker podcast is called Poker in the Ears, that I host with James Hardigan, who is the best poker commentator to ever have the job. And our podcast won an award this year, Podcast of the Year at the Global Poker Awards, so we're pretty excited about that. That's awesome. And those are the places I would love for people to follow me.
If you're looking for a second podcast and looking into poker in the Ears is, I can confirm, tremendous, and James Hardigan is the GOAT.
Thank you very much.
All right, man. Do you have any friends, family that you'd like to nominate to come on this podcast so they too can suffer as you have today?
Yeah, I do. But too many to name here. Honestly, I'm friends with a ton of very funny stand-up comedians who your audience probably is unlikely to be aware of yet. Actually, some of them have gone semi-viral recently. But if you want to have really funny comics on who will more than likely be someone your audience will one day know. Like, these are guys who you're going to go, oh shit, I heard this guy on the Triple P podcast 5 years ago, and now he has a Netflix special, or she has a Netflix special. There are some really funny people I can put you in touch with.
Sweet. Well, we'll have to irritate them and annoy them to come on here, and I am all game for that.
He's a pro.
All right, man. Well, thank you, Stapes, for being my guest today. And a special thanks to my editor, Richard Ashford, and my composer, Joshua Gibbons. And thank you. Yes, you listening at home or wherever you found time to appreciate this. Time is the most precious commodity we have, and I appreciate you spending yours with us. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like, or just share with a friend. Every little bit helps. Or if you already have and are out of episodes to listen to, don't worry. We put out a new episode every Monday at midnight on SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes at Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast. And a very special thanks are due to our patrons, Sabella Yellow. And if you'd like to join said illustrious ranks and have your name read aloud, just head on over to patreon.com/Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast. And remember, folks, if beets are neat, but no fun to eat, and coffee and tea make me need to pee, why then do crab cakes not make me want to go to the lake with Drake?